Here is your
This place is
story.
so
Dash
stuffy.
dash
It
dash.
has its
She had
charms.
exactly
Like you?
14
Maybe.
minutes to become someone unlovable. Natalie Chen stood in the bathroom of her Chicago high-rise, staring at the woman in the mirror, the woman who had built a $200 million logistics company from a folding table in her studio apartment, who had graced the cover of Forbes, who hadn't cried since her mother's funeral 6 years ago. And now her college roommate, Dana, had signed her up for a blind date without her consent, texting her the restaurant address with 3 red heart emojis and the words, "He's perfect for you. Just go. Please." Asterisk. Natalie had tried canceling. She'd drafted the message 4 times. But something, guilt, maybe, or the terrifying possibility that Dana was right, had stopped her finger from hitting send. So instead, she had a plan. She would be so thoroughly awful that the poor man would flee within 20 minutes, and she could go home, eat leftover pad thai, and feel zero guilt about it. She dug through her gym bag, pulling out a faded, paint-stained sweatshirt. She scraped her hair into a lopsided bun. She smudged her mascara deliberately under her eyes. She practiced scowling. She decided, like someone who had argued with a raccoon and lost. Perfect. The restaurant was a quiet Italian place on the north side, warm lighting, checkered tablecloths, the smell of garlic butter thick in the air. The kind of place people brought someone they actually wanted to impress. Natalie felt a pang of guilt walking in looking the way she did, but she buried it fast. The hostess led her to a corner booth, and that's when she saw him. He was not what she expected. Marcus Webb was handsome, sure, broad shoulders, warm brown skin, a jaw that could have been carved, but that wasn't what stopped her. It was the small sneaker dangling from his jacket pocket. A tiny red sneaker. And the way his eyes, when he looked up and saw her disheveled appearance, didn't flinch. Didn't flicker with disappointment. He simply stood up, extended his hand, and said, "You must be Natalie." "I'm Marcus. You okay? You look like you had a rough commute." She blinked. "I look like I had a rough decade." He laughed. It was a real laugh, surprised and unguarded. "Fair enough. Sit down. I already ordered us bread." She sat. She had expected awkwardness. She had planned on manufacturing it. But Marcus Webb, it turned out, was not a man who did awkward. Over the next 20 minutes, she learned that he was an elementary school teacher who coached Little League on weekends. That he'd moved to Chicago from Atlanta 2 years ago. That he had a 5-year-old son named Theo, who was currently at home with a babysitter and had, apparently, packed his own sneaker into Marcus's jacket pocket that morning as a good luck charm, Theo's words. "He said I'd need it," Marcus said, glancing at the tiny sneaker with a softness that made something shift uncomfortably in Natalie's chest. "He worries about me. 5 years old and he worries about me. Where's his mom?" The question came out before Natalie could stop it. Rude. Perfect, actually. Part of the plan. But Marcus didn't bristle. She'd passed away. 3 years ago. Aneurysm. One morning she was fine, and then, he paused, looked at the bread basket. Then she wasn't. The silence that followed was not uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that only exists between 2 people who have both learned to carry enormous things alone. Natalie set down her fork. She had not touched the bread, because eating felt too much like staying. "I'm sorry," she said, and she meant it, truly, completely meant it in a way she hadn't meant anything in a long time. "Thank you," he said simply. Then he looked at her, really looked at her, with those steady, undemanding eyes, and said, "Dana told me you lost your mom a few years back." "I'm sorry too." Natalie had not expected that. She had come here armed with deflections and performance, and he'd just walked right past all of it and touched the one thing she'd kept bricked up behind every success and every long work night and every lonely Sunday. She felt her throat tighten. She looked awful. She'd made sure of it. Her sweatshirt had a bleach stain the size of a fist. Her hair was escaping its bun in all the wrong directions. She hadn't smiled once. She'd asked an intrusive question about his dead wife. And he was still there. Still calm. Still kind. "Why aren't you running?" she asked. The plan had dissolved somewhere between the tiny red sneaker and the word aneurysm. She wasn't performing anymore. She was just asking. Marcus tilted his head. "Should I be? I came here looking like this on purpose," she admitted. She didn't know why she was telling him. Maybe because he'd been honest, and honesty has a way of demanding honesty back. "I didn't want to be here. I was going to scare you off." He was quiet for a moment. Then the corner of his mouth lifted. I figured. You figured. The mascara under your eyes is kind of symmetrical. That doesn't happen by accident. He leaned forward, lacing his fingers together on the table. And you keep almost smiling and then stopping yourself. Like you decided before you walked in that you weren't going to enjoy this, and now you're annoyed that you are. Natalie opened her mouth. Closed it. He was right. She was enjoying this. Genuinely, disturbingly, inconveniently enjoying this. I run a company, she said, as if that explained something. I don't have time for bread. He pushed the basket toward her. She laughed. She hadn't planned to. It came out real and a little ragged, like something that had been stored too long in too small a space, and Marcus smiled at the sound of it like it was the most natural thing in the world. They stayed for 2.5 hours. She learned that Theo was obsessed with dinosaurs and could name 47 species. That Marcus made pancakes shaped like T-Rexes every Saturday morning. That he hadn't been on a date in 2 years because he was terrified of bringing someone into Theo's life who might disappear. She told him things she hadn't said out loud in years. About building her company on grief-fueled sleepless nights. About how her mother had believed in her before she'd believed in herself. About how she'd gotten so good at not needing anyone that she'd forgotten it was even an option. Outside the restaurant, in the cold March air, they stood on the sidewalk a beat too long. I want to see you again, Marcus said. If that's okay. Natalie looked at him. This man who'd brought a tiny red sneaker to a blind date for luck. Who'd seen through her performance in the first 5 minutes and stayed anyway. Who raised a little boy to worry about the people he loved. She had spent years building walls and polishing them until they looked like ambition. And Marcus hadn't tried to climb them or break them down. He'd just waited, patiently, on the other side, like someone who understood that the people worth knowing sometimes take a little longer to open the door. Yeah, she said quietly. It's okay. She pulled out her phone to exchange numbers, and when she turned it over, she had a text from Theo's babysitter, forwarded through Dana, somehow, because 5-year-olds are surprisingly resourceful. It said, "Did the sneaker work?" Asterisk. She showed Marcus. He put his face in his hands. She laughed again, that real, ragged laugh, and this time, she let it stay. Some people find each other because they're both looking. And some people find each other because one of them stops hiding long enough for the other to see them clearly, smudged mascara and bleach stains and all. Natalie had come to dinner hoping to be invisible. Instead, for the first time in years, she felt completely seen.